Well, Jonathan, here we are again.
Great. Let's do it.
Training, sports outreach ministry training for the local church and people around the world. And I am joined here by Jonathan Detweiler of Uttermost Sport, and I am Greg Linville with CSRM. We are now on our fourth topic.
Great.
It seems like we have been in quite a few of them, and each topic has a number of sessions. And if you're just joining us, obviously there's 3 topics before us, and now we've come to a topic that we want to bring up to date on how we define things. And so
maybe that seems a little backwards, but
well, could be.
I don't think so. I think we're right at the right point where this is
that's right
critical. So
and so what we've got before us today is we're going to talk a number of sessions. The first one's going to be on defining sport. And Jonathan, we're helping people in the local church around the world, trying to help them figure out how to really be about what we're calling evangelistic disciple making, which helps people focus on the fact that it's not just one or the other. It's not an either or. It's not an antithesis, but it's a holistic process. And we're asking people in a local church and sports people around the world to start to re-envision their sports ministry, because we think that there is some reason to believe that some of the models have not necessarily been going well. And all of this training is based upon a 3-tier paradigm: the theological truths, which then inform the level 2 philosophical principles, biblically based philosophical principles, out of which emerge a level 3 methodological model. And most of our people in the sports ministry world, they only go to the model.
Right.
And then when it doesn't work, they're trying to figure out, well, maybe I should throw the whole thing out. And we're saying, no, but we need to re-envision the model, and we're trying to help people understand these things. And so throughout these sessions, we're going to help people move from level 1 to level 3 and how they interact with one another and how they build upon one another. And so this is 2 different groups of that have come together, and I'm representing CSRM, you're Uttermost Sports, and we're 2 of about 10 ministries that have come together as official partners. This is a great collaboration, and I thank you and I thank Uttermost for your participation in this. Well, let's get started.
Let's go
on this one. And the first session is on defining sport. So, what is sport?
Yeah. Well, you see a definition there up on your screen: a generic and inclusive term that includes almost any physical, recreation, or leisure activity. And as I have worked around the world in more than 70 countries, I find that people define sport by their own experience. Mm-hmm. You know, so for us in the West, especially in the U.S. now, it's American football. That's the number 1 watched sport of all time right now and around the nation. And then soccer is probably the number 1 participation sport, where kids are participating, and it's growing that way. And so we kind of have this this way that we define sport by our own experience. But I want you to start thinking outside of the box, beyond your own experience, beyond even what you have grown up to do. I was not a professional athlete. I played lacrosse in college. I played all kinds of recreational sports growing up. And so when I started thinking of sports ministry, of course it was basketball, it was baseball, it was American football, although I didn't play. I like to watch. But then as I began to consider all that God had with this tool that He wants us to use, that it's even beyond my own experience. And again, we're coming from the premise that the church and the world are growing further and further apart. And there's regardless of what culture or country you live in, whether it's a difficult country for believers or whether it's the West where we have complete freedom, the reality is that there's a distance between believers and their own community and their own world. And so we believe that sports is one of the greatest tools that God has given us to reach this generation with the gospel, specifically to engage them in relationships, so that then out of that relationship you can demonstrate the love of Jesus and basically allow God to use you in their life, to be a light, to be His witnesses to the world. And so then if you look at this from a little bit broader perspective, you come to realize that sports is more than my own experience, more than your own experience. It's gender inclusive, meaning it's for boys and girls. It's age inclusive. It's for all ages. It's not just for young people. I think one of the fastest growing areas of sports ministry here in the West is to the elderly or the older generation, because they need sports, they need activities as well to keep them healthy and young. And then there's ability varied, which is different levels of skill, that everybody plays a sport or activity they're involved in. So whether it is a professional athlete or a recreational athlete or a leisure athlete or a novice. And then intensity varied has to do with the level of competition. That whether you're in it because it's your job, whether you're in it because you just want to win, or whether you're in it because you just want to play and enjoy. And then the last thing to consider is activity varied. It's team sport, it's individual sports, it's recreational activity. I love that term, recreational, because what is it? It's recreational. And we are actually using sport to recreate a person physically, but also their soul, so that they can come to know Jesus. So it's all levels of recreational activities. It's things that people do just for leisure, for walking or games. We have a partner in Eastern Europe, and they started a chess club as a part of their sports ministry.
Leisure pursuits.
Right. Others, ballroom dancing. You would never think of that, but that's a recreational activity that can be a part of a sports ministry.
Which is why a lot of churches, particularly in the West, talk about this as being a ministry that is sports and recreation.
Exactly.
And it's not just sport, but it could be all of this.
Yeah, and so we want you to start thinking in that vein, to say that, okay, it's not just what I know traditionally as sport, but let's, again, look outside in our community, our neighborhood, and how can we engage the people we want to engage using the tool of sport and recreation that will be attractive to them, so that then you can actually become intentional about building a relationship.
There's a couple things as we define this that I think are important for people to understand. First of all, you may have not been a professional athlete, but I was. At least that's what my church people said when I was hired in the church. We pay you to play?
Well, there you go, in that way.
Pay you to play, right. And they never dealt with all those parents in my office that were complaining and all that kind of stuff. But some of these definitions, Jonathan, need just a little bit more explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And as we think about a changing world even, within the sports, what used to be called the sports ministry, the recreation ministry of a church, first of all, is it sports or is it recreation? Well, it's both. And in the last 10 years, there's been this incredible trend of growing fitness ministries in a local church.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas it used to be team softball and basketball and now we have this fitness ministry that tends to be more individualized and not team participation. And there's also the outdoor pursuits, mm-hmm. and the camping, and so you're trying to expand our understanding of this, and churches that are trying to reach people and trying to disciple people, if we get mono-focused on just one thing, youth basketball or adult football or what have you, I think we can lose a lot of people and fail to recognize how important this is. The other thing that comes to mind here when we start talking about these things, and you mentioned it a little bit already, but the age, particularly in America, the aging of the population and the need for health and holistic health. Right. The church is missing a big group of people, demographic here. And our society is going through a whole new definition about gender. And we could have a whole topic on just gender and biological. I mean, the Blade Runner in the last Olympics, and we're trying to figure out, is this person male, female, or transgender? Are they helped by the blades or hindered by the blades? There's a lot of issues that are out there. We're not going to talk about a lot of that other than just to tell you that we're sensitive to these things and we know that they're out there. But all the more reason to emphasize what Jonathan has just said. Varied, varied, varied. Expand your horizons a little bit about how you can help. And one of the things that's really starting to trend right now, Jonathan, is those challenger sports. People who have some extra need or an extra gift, if you will. And a lot of churches are having phenomenal success at helping people that may have some physical maladies, whether they're coming back from military assignments without some of their extremities, or they've been born with a certain physical body.
Yeah.
And so very, 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 I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
Let's look at it from this perspective too, Jonathan, that this is a way that I think people sometimes really can grab hold of it, that there's athletics, that sport has two sides. One is activity, and you may not even have to be able to move much more than a hand or an arm. And then there's athletics, that you have to almost have your entire body in total sync with your brain and soul and spirit in order for it to happen.
Yeah, for example, when I was running sports ministry, we started actually a book reading club as a part of our sport ministry because we saw there were parents who weren't being reached. So it was kind of out of the box thinking.
And that's how the YMCA started.
Right.
It didn't have anything to do with athletics. When you think about athletics, think about it from sequential, simultaneous, and then there's also the synchronized, which comes in the team sport. Sequential meaning that I'm going to jump and then you're going to jump, and then I'm going to throw and you're going to throw, and you'll throw and then I can't catch. But this throwing, catching, jumping, that it's sequential. You do it, then I do it. And then there's the simultaneous, which could also be sequential because you have heats where you're in that lane, I'm in this lane, and you're swimming and I'm drowning, but we're side by side. And we're simultaneous, but I'm not doing anything to impact you other than just maybe encouraging you, if I'm out ahead of you, to run a little faster. And I would be ahead of you, even at my age.
Okay.
And so you see the simultaneous, and then the synchronized, which we call the team sports, is that you have the ball, and then I have the ball. It's sequential, but it's also simultaneous because of how we go about these things. Now, this will start to come a little bit more as we get into some of the theology of competition and some other topics like that. But each one of these, each level you go up from sequential to simultaneous to the synchronized team sports, each one raises the level of competition. And that's kind of what you were saying, that there's a varied level of competition.
Sure. Right.
And sometimes people in the local church don't understand this very well. And then we come to the activities that have all these, and people say, wait a minute, politics and marriage? Oh, yeah, there's some activities that have to do with competition. I was definitely in competition for my wife. And I won.
That's
I won.
Right.
And I've been blessed ever since, and I don't understand what she got out of the deal, but I know what I got out of it. But yes, even playful games in the sandbox, on the beach. And so what we have to have people understand in the local church is, you begin to organize your sports and your activities, when you begin to understand how some of these things fit and some of these definitions of sport, you're going to be better able to plan your sport so you can better able reach people and disciple people.
Very good.
Thoughts about that?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. And so as we move forward, keep this in mind, keep this perspective, and maybe as a homework assignment to think through from your own sports ministry, your own sports background, how do you define sport?
That's right.
And then how do you need to change your definition? And then let's talk in the next sessions how we can move forward together.
And speaking of that, the next session is going to be on defining ministry.
Right, we're going to bring the two together.
So join us for that one as we talk to you in the next session about how we can define ministry and what that means. All right, thanks for being with us, and we'll talk about defining ministry next time.
See ya.